Hey there and welcome. My name is Steven and I like to watch movies. So there's two things that I want to highlight. First, this is not a best of list. This is just my favorites of the year. Second thing that I want to point out is that there are a lot of films that I have yet to see in 2024. The Brutalist, Memoirs of a Snail, The Wild Robot, A Different Man, Flow, Nickel Boys, Bird, September 5, Queer, A Complete Unknown. So many to see. I have a lot of catching up to do. So these are not ordered from most favorite to least favorite or best to worst. They are just ordered from when I watch them. Not release date, but when I actually watch the movies. So here we go. So first up is Dune Part 2. Paul Atreides unites with the Fremen while on a warpath of revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the universe, he endeavors to prevent a terrible future. This film, I'm going to be completely honest, I feel like Dune Part 1 just worked better for me. However, with that being said, Dune Part 2 is still an incredible film. Zimmer's score in this is incredible, just like the first one. The one track, A Time of Quiet Between the Storms, I love that track. I love the score. Hans Zimmer knocks it out of the park yet again. Next up is Civil War. In a dystopian future, 4 journalists travel across the United States during a nationwide conflict. While trying to survive, they aim to reach the White House to interview the president before he is overthrown. The one thing that I want to highlight for this film is Kirsten Dunst's performance. It's very subtle, very reflective, very internal, and Kaylee Spaney's character kind of representing a younger version of her. And the images that are shot is incredible, very much through the journalist's eyes, and I thought that was very unique. I know this is a very divisive film. I loved it though. I love Civil War. Next up is The Fall Guy. A stuntman, fresh off an almost career-ending accident, has to track down a missing movie star, solve a conspiracy, and try to win back the love of his life while still doing his day job. What could possibly go right? I saw this in theaters twice this year. The first time I thought there was pacing issues. I thought it got better after the Phil Collins sequence. Then the second time I watched it, I actually thought that the film was better paced overall. I thought it was really cool that it was a love letter to stunts and stuntmen. They don't get a lot of love, so it was really awesome to see that. All in all, it was a very entertaining ride. Next up, we have Inside Out 2, a sequel that features Riley entering puberty and experiencing brand new, more complex emotions as a result. As Riley tries to adapt to her teenage years, her old emotions try to adapt to the possibility of being replaced. Inside Out 2 is a very solid and worthy sequel. Inside Out is still the better film for me, but Inside Out 2 is very worthy. I was very pleased with what they did. The new emotions are great. I wish that they had just implemented the new emotions a little bit better, because really all we get is anxiety. Anxiety steals the show, as it should, but I really think that ennui, embarrassment, and envy should have had a little bit more to do in this film. Talking about new emotions, ennui is my favorite, hands down. Next up, we have Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool is offered a place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe by the Time Variance Authority, but instead recruits a variant of Wolverine to save his universe from extinction. Everyone knows that this was the movie to kind of come out and save the MCU. Did it? We'll find out. Financially, it definitely got them back on the right track, but creatively, we'll see where we go from here. One thing I want to point out is Hugh Jackman's performance is really good. He is sort of the emotional anchor of this film. So you got Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool with the jokes, but Hugh Jackman's Wolverine variant, he is the soul of this film. He delivers a great performance. Next up is Sing Sing. Divine G, imprisoned at Sing Sing for a crime he didn't commit, finds purpose by acting in a theater group alongside other incarcerated men in this story of resilience, humanity, and the transformative power of art. I love this film. This film hit me hard. Most of the performers in this film are not quote-unquote professional actors. They are the incarcerated men that were at Sing Sing. So I wasn't really sure what to expect. Their performances were incredible. Clarence Macklin was phenomenal. I think all of the actors who are not professional actors, I mean they are now, they ground the film, whereas Coleman Domingo guides the film, and I think he does a tremendous job of that. Up next is The Substance. A fading celebrity takes a black market drug, a cell-replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself. So I saw this at TIFF during Midnight Madness, and seeing this film with that Midnight Madness crowd was an event. An event like no other. No one truly knew what to expect. Everybody had heard great things, but it blew us away. The cinematography, the sound design, and the editing all together really created something special. And by special, I mean disgusting and gross. And there's just sounds in this film that just really bothered me, but in a great, great way. The third act, as everybody is saying, goes off the rails, and it's one of the best films of the year, hands down. I loved it. Up next is Can I Get a Witness? In a not so distant future, there is a reality where, in order to save the planet, death is everyone's job, with 50-year-olds taking the sacrifice while teenage artists need to document it. I saw this at TIFF, so this film really deals with anticipatory grief. This film also includes some animation, and I think it was done very tastefully. It's not something that really takes away from the scene at all. It actually enhances it. I know some people didn't really like the movie in general. I do. I think it's fantastic. Next up is Paying for It. When an introverted cartoonist girlfriend wants to redefine the relationship, he begins sleeping with sex workers and discovers a new kind of intimacy in the process. An adaptation of the graphic novel by Chester Brown. So the interesting story about this is that this was originally a graphic novel by Chester Brown, and Chester Brown was that cartoonist. And the cartoonist's girlfriend, Sookyun Lee, is the director of this film. So she directed the graphic novel adaptation of their relationship and what kind of happened. So it's kind of a wild story in and of itself of how this came to be. I saw this at TIFF, and the cast was really good. I really want to watch it again. I love the fact that it's a very Canadian, very Toronto film. Next up, we have We Live in Time. An up-and-coming chef and a recent divorcee find their lives forever changed when a chance encounter brings them together in a decade-spanning, deeply moving romance. Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield kill it in this. They are so good, and so good together. It's really what made the connection believable. They have great performances separately, but together they're dynamite. I saw this at TIFF. There was not a dry eye in the theater. It's a very touching and moving film. Next up is Shook. After a run-in with his estranged father, aspiring writer Ashish, or Ash, learns a secret that will force him to balance family, love, and success while navigating the divide between the exciting city life he wants and his suburban reality. So this film was kind of hyped up as being a very Scarborough film. I grew up in Scarborough. It's a Scarborough film, but the story itself is really good. It really is about family. It was very funny. It was very heartwarming. But yeah, the performances in this are very good. This was one of the surprises at TIFF for me. Next up, we have The Assessment. In the near future, where parenthood is strictly controlled, a couple's 7-day assessment for the right to have a child unravels into a psychological nightmare. So the concept is very interesting. Alicia Vikander's performance in this is incredible. She gets to play literally and figuratively. Like, she plays in this role. From scene to scene or shot to shot, I had no idea how she would behave. I love the ability of this film to keep me on my toes, and so I didn't know what was coming next. Next up is Conclave. When Cardinal Lawrence is tasked with leading one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, selecting a new pope, he finds himself at the center of a conspiracy that could shake the very foundation of the Catholic Church. I thought the cinematography and the score were phenomenal in this. I wasn't as big on the score for All Quiet on the Western Front, the previous Edward Berger film, but the score in Conclave, it really provides a sort of unsettling nature to the film, and it really gets you sort of enthralled. Ralph Fiennes is very, very good in this. You've got great performances from everybody else in the cast, of course, but this is Ralph Fiennes' film. He carries this film from beginning to end. Next up, we have Rumors. The leaders of 7 wealthy democracies get lost in the woods while drafting a statement on a global crisis, facing danger as they attempt to find their way out. You've got Cate Blanchett, you've got Charles Dance playing the American president, which in and of itself was great choice and hilarious, but Roy Dupuis steals the show. Roy Dupuis is awesome in this. The film is hilarious. The ending is insane. There are breadcrumbs that are left through the film, and they all culminate into the climax in such a wild way. It's not as wild as like The Substance third act, but it is wild for this film, even one that features a giant brain. Next up is Saturday Night. At 11:30 p.m. on October 11th, 1975, a ferocious troupe of young comedians and writers changed television forever. Find out what happened behind the scenes in the 90 minutes leading up to the first broadcast of Saturday Night Live. This film has a breakneck pace. There's a lot to get through in the 90 minutes. Pacing is just relentless, but I liked that. I think it was a pretty good choice to do it in that way, because it almost becomes thrilling. We know they get it done because Saturday Night Live's been on the air since 1975. But you have that feeling of like, will they get it done? Can they get it done? Is it going to be successful? Next up is Universal Language. An absurdist triptych of seemingly unconnected stories find a mysterious point of intersection in this tale set somewhere between Winnipeg and Tehran. I saw this at TIFF. This is Canada's official entry into the Best International Feature category at the Oscars. Honestly, I could see why. It is so funny. I mean, it's a bit of a dry humor, such a tender film. It has a lot of heart. The third act, there's something that happens in the third act that I wasn't really prepared for, and I really think elevated the film to be something more. Next up is The Shrouds. Karsh, an innovative businessman and grieving widower, builds a device to connect with the dead inside a burial shroud. So this one was very obviously Cronenberg-y, since it was directed by him. It's not too Crimes of the Future, and it's not too Eastern Promises. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. It definitely has its body horror, which was very good. The burial shrouds that they created were very cool. So the production design was excellent. This is definitely a film that I have to rewatch at home, where I can start to understand it maybe a little bit better, because it did lose me a little bit in the third act, and the end was very surprising. It kind of just ends. I mean, a lot of Cronenberg films do just end, but this one kind of just ended. Next up, we have The Girl with the Needle. Copenhagen, 1919. A young worker finds herself unemployed and pregnant. She meets Dagmar, who runs an underground adoption agency. A strong connection grows, but her world shatters when she stumbles on the shocking truth behind her work. I had no idea this was based on a true story or a real person, Dagmar. So going in, I was intrigued by the story. I was intrigued by where this might go. And then at the end, I saw this at TIFF. During the Q&A, the director was explaining his fascination with Dagmar and the story. So yeah, it's a tough watch, but in a great way. I wasn't sure what to expect from one act to another. I think it hit the parents in the audience a lot harder than it did me, but it still hit me. It was still something that I thought about, and the black and white cinematography was also very good. Next up, we have Megalopolis. This is going to surprise a lot of people, but yes, it's on this list. The city of New Rome faces the duel between Caesar Catalina, a brilliant artist in favor of a utopian future, and the greedy mayor Franklin Cicero. Between them is Julia Cicero, with her loyalty divided between her father and her beloved. Yes, Megalopolis is on the list. So, Megalopolis, does this film continue to swing? Yes. Does it miss? A lot of the time it does. Does it ultimately strike out? Yes, it struck out. But you know what? It actually played. And I think that's worth something. It tried something. It was ambitious. It was trying to get away of the monotony of franchises. And for that, I appreciate it. Next up is Heretic. Two young religious women are drawn into a game of cat and mouse in the house of a strange man. I didn't know what to expect going into this. I knew that Hugh Grant was going to give a great performance because I'd heard that Hugh Grant was going to have a great performance. And yes, he has a great performance. He is so good. He goes from Jar Jar Binks to Creep and everything in between. The dialogue, the conversations, the debates, he really keeps everybody on their toes. I think it does lose a little steam in the third act, but overall the film works for me and it works really well. The atmosphere created in all of this is really good, especially from the first scene, because the first scene is very sunny, it's very hopeful, it's very cheerful, and then the rest of the movie just goes down a dark path. Next up, we have A Real Pain. Mismatched cousins reunite for a tour through Poland to honor their beloved grandmother, but their old tensions resurface against the backdrop of their family history. Everyone is talking about Kieran Culkin's performance in this, and rightfully so, but I want to talk about Jesse Eisenberg's performance because he surprised me. His performance kind of started out, it was very Jesse Eisenberg-y, but then it started to develop into something more, and his direction was very solid. I thought I was going to be impacted by this film through the Holocaust tour, but I didn't. I felt it through the characters. I felt it through Jesse Eisenberg. I felt it through Kieran Culkin. I felt it through the other members of the tour group as well, and how the tour was impacting the characters. Very lovely film. Next up is The Piano Lesson. Follows the lives of the Charles family as they deal with themes of family legacy and more in deciding what to do with an heirloom, the family piano. I didn't know anything about the story going in. I knew that Malcolm Washington was the director, and so I was very excited to see what he could do because obviously we know what John David is capable of. The story, the performances, all exceptional. A couple of shout outs that I want to give because everybody's talking about Samuel L. Jackson and Danielle Deadwyler, obviously, but Michael Potts and Ray Fisher are really good in this. I didn't know much about the supernatural or spiritual aspect of the story, but I thought it was really well done. You know, the film obviously hints at the spiritual, supernatural elements, but when all is said and done in the third act, I think it comes together really nicely. Next up is Juror Number 2. While serving as a juror in a high-profile murder trial, a family man finds himself struggling with a serious moral dilemma, one he could use to sway the jury verdict and potentially convict or free the wrong killer. So I'm not really sure why this went pretty much straight to streaming. This was a great film. It's solid. It's another Eastwood gem. I think Nicholas Hoult carries this movie on his back. And so if Nicholas Hoult couldn't rise to the occasion, this could easily fall apart, but it doesn't. There's another movie on this list that features a Nicholas Hoult performance, but I think between the two, this is his standout. And finally, we have Nosferatu, a gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. The color palette that they use in this film is really interesting because I kept getting sucked into this viewpoint that I was watching a black and white film, but I wasn't because it's not black and white photography. I thought that was a tremendous decision. Skarsgård's voice in this, it's not just coming from like the center channel with the other dialogue, it envelops you, so you feel it in your bones. Very good choice. So yeah, that's it. Those are my 24 favorites of 2024. Thank you so much for stopping by. What are your favorites of 2024? Do you have a top 10, top 20 list of the last year? Do you have a favorite performance, favorite scenes, favorite shots, favorite sounds? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.